You know, sometimes the darkest shadows aren't cast by things in the room, but by the secrets we keep in our hearts. This is a story about faith, about family, and about a single terrible choice that unraveled it all. It's a story that didn't happen in some distant foreign land, but right here in the heart of America, in a quiet, struggling town called Cedarville, Ohio. If you are ready for a story that will cling to your bones long after it's over, then get comfortable. But trust me, you might want to leave a light on. Our story begins at the end, in the cold, echoing stillness of the Ross County Correctional Facility. A man named Michael Evans sat on the edge of his cot, his hands trembling slightly. The air always smelled of bleach and despair. This wasn't his life. This was a nightmare he'd been living for years. A devout man, a man of God, now serving a life sentence. His crime? A question that would hang in the air heavy and suffocating for the entire story. He was waiting for Fajr, the dawn prayer. Even here, surrounded by concrete and steel, his faith was a flickering candle in a vast darkness. He unrolled his prayer mat, the familiar motions a small anchor in an ocean of regret. As he bowed his head, the memory of his old life, the smell of his wife's perfume, the sound of his daughter's laughter washed over him like a physical pain. A guard's voice crackled over the intercom. "Evans, you've got a visitor." A tiny spark of hope ignited in Michael's chest. A visitor, it could only be one person, and just like that, we're pulled back in time 7 months earlier. To see how a man like Michael Evans ended up in a place like this. The Evans family lived in a modest two-story house on Maple Street in Cedarville. The paint was peeling a little and the fence needed mending, but it was a home filled with love. Every morning before the sun even thought about rising, Michael was up. He was the pastor of a small, non-denominational Christian church in town, a man whose faith was as solid as the oak trees lining his street. He'd move through the quiet house, a gentle hand on each bedroom door. "Sarah," he'd whisper to his wife. "Natalie, Jasmine, time to get up for prayer." He'd wake his two daughters, ensuring they started their day with God before heading to the church for the early morning service. After prayers, they'd all gather around the kitchen table for breakfast. But on this particular morning, the table was sparse. There was some toast, a few scrambled eggs stretched thin to feed four, and some orange juice from concentrate. The air was thick with a tension that had nothing to do with the food. Sarah, Michael's wife, pushed her eggs around her plate, her face a mask of quiet anxiety. You see, the Evans family was struggling. Michael's church was small, and the donations weren't what they used to be. Sarah ran a little craft and fabric shop downtown, but business had been bad, real bad. They were barely making ends meet. Their eldest daughter, Natalie, was 17, with a gentle spirit and a heart full of dreams for college. Their younger daughter, Jasmine, was 14, all bright eyes and a fierce love for her family. Looking at the meager breakfast, Natalie didn't complain. Instead, she smiled softly. "It's okay, Mum. We're thankful for what we have. God provides." "Yeah," Jasmine chimed in. "It's better than nothing." Michael's heart swelled with pride, even as it ached with responsibility. He had raised them right, but Sarah just saw failure. She saw her daughters going without, and it was eating her alive now. Let's pull the camera back from this struggling but loving home. Let's go across town to a much, much nicer neighborhood. A large, colonial-style house stood there, imposing and perfect. But inside, perfection was a lie. In a bedroom on the second floor, a girl named Rebecca was tied to her heavy oak bedpost with strong leather straps. Her eyes were wild, unfocused. Her mother, Eleanor, entered cautiously, a tray of food in her hands. "Sweetheart, I brought you some soup," Eleanor said, her voice trembling. Rebecca's head snapped up. "Why are you doing this to me, Mom? What did I do wrong? Let me go." Tears streamed down Eleanor's face. "You didn't do anything wrong, baby. You didn't. You just have to be strong. Your father, he's gone to get help. Just a little longer." "It hurts, Mom. It hurts so much." Rebecca screamed, her body straining against the restraints. Eleanor's resolve broke. "It's not you, Rebecca. It's a spirit. A dark spirit has a hold of you." The moment those words left her lips, Rebecca's expression shifted. It became something else, something ancient and cruel. "Then why did you stop?" A guttural voice, not her daughter's, hissed from her mouth. Eleanor gasped, stumbling back. She fumbled with the leather strap on one of Rebecca's wrists, her fingers slick with sweat. The buckle came loose. It was a catastrophic mistake. The moment her hand was free, Rebecca, or the thing inside her, slammed it against the headboard with a crack that wasn't human. The bedroom door slammed shut all on its own, the lock clicking. Eleanor's keyring, which had the key to the ankle restraint, fell from her hand and skittered across the floor right to Rebecca's free hand. She unlocked her ankle, and now the entity was completely free. It stood up, Rebecca's body moving with a predatory grace that was utterly alien. A low, guttural laugh filled the room. Now we can have some real fun." It lunged at Eleanor. Just then, the front door crashed open. Michael Evans, along with Rebecca's father, Richard, and a wealthy family friend named Mr. Thorne, burst into the house, following the sounds of Eleanor's screams. They had to shoulder charge the bedroom door to get in. Inside, they found Eleanor on the floor, clutching a bleeding gash on her arm. And Rebecca. She was on her. A wild animal. Michael didn't hesitate. "Get them out!" he yelled to Richard, grabbing Rebecca and pulling her off her mother with surprising strength. He pinned her to the ground as Richard helped a sobbing Eleanor out of the room. Mr. Thorne stood frozen in the doorway, his face pale. Michael began to pray, but this wasn't a gentle Sunday morning prayer. This was spiritual warfare. He knew the rites of deliverance, the Christian form of exorcism. He held Rebecca down, placing a hand on her forehead, his voice firm and unwavering, as he commanded the spirit to leave in the name of Jesus Christ. Rebecca's body convulsed. A low, smoky rasp seemed to emanate from her, a sound that smelled faintly of ozone and decay. Her head thrashed, and for a moment, her eyes cleared, filled with a terror that was entirely her own before the darkness slammed back in. But Michael was relentless. He prayed with a ferocity born of absolute faith, and finally, with one last wrenching scream that seemed to tear itself from the very walls, the presence left her. Rebecca collapsed, sobbing, into his arms. She was free. Later, downstairs, a deeply grateful Richard tried to press a thick envelope of cash into Michael's hand. "Please, Pastor Michael, you saved my little girl. Take it for your church, for your family." Michael gently pushed the money away. "I can't, Richard. The gift of deliverance, of healing, it's from God. I can't charge for it. My faith, it's all I have." He left the Thorne mansion with nothing but their thanks, and when he got home, his shirt torn, his knuckles bruised, Sarah was waiting. She saw the empty hands, the weary eyes. "You did it again, didn't you?" she said, her voice tight. "You helped them and you took nothing again." "Sarah," Michael said, trying to soothe her, This is a calling. God gave me this ability to serve, not to profit. Serve? Sarah's voice cracked. Michael, Natalie is about to start college. Jasmine's tuition is due. We can barely put food on the table. And you're out there performing miracles for free. When is God going to serve us? It was the first crack in the foundation of their family. A crack a shadow would soon pour through. The very next day, that crack widened. At Cedarville High, Natalie was sitting alone on a bench when Farhan, the most popular boy in school, sauntered over. He was handsome, drove a fancy car, and had his pick of any girl. "Hey, Natalie, need a ride home?" he asked, flashing a charming smile. Natalie, ever the modest girl her father raised, politely declined. "No, thank you, Farhan, it wouldn't be right." But Farhan was persistent. As Natalie stood to leave, flustered, she accidentally bumped into another girl, Chloe. Chloe, who had a massive crush on Farhan, despised Natalie. The collision sent Chloe's brand new iPhone flying, and it landed with a sickening crunch, the screen shattering into a spider web of cracks. Chloe went nuclear. "You stupid, clumsy freak, look what you did. You're going to pay for this. Not just a screen repair, a whole new phone, or I'm filing a police report for destruction of property." Natalie, terrified, brought the broken phone home. The weight of it in her hands felt like the weight of the world. When Michael and Sarah saw it, their hearts sank. A new phone, they couldn't afford groceries. And as if that wasn't enough, Jasmine came home with a warning letter from her school. Her final exam fees were overdue. If they weren't paid, she wouldn't be allowed to graduate middle school. That night, the house on Maple Street was shrouded in a silence heavier than any darkness. Maybe we could take out a loan?" Sarah whispered, desperate. "No," Michael said, his voice firm but gentle. "A loan would just bury us deeper. We have to have faith, Sarah. God will make a way." As if on cue, there was a knock at the door. It was Richard, Rebecca's father, and he wasn't alone. Mr. Thorne was with him. His face was grim. "Pastor Michael," Mr. Thorne said, his voice strained. "It's my niece, Rachel. She's like Rebecca was, but worse. The things we've seen, the local priests, they've tried, they've failed. You're our last hope." Despite the hour Michael went, the Thorne family estate was even grander than Richard's, but it felt cold, wrong. As they approached a heavy oak door on the second floor, a guttural roar echoed from within, making the very floorboards vibrate. Michael entered the room alone, offering a prayer of protection as he crossed the threshold. The door slammed shut behind him, locking him in. Inside, it was a scene from a nightmare. Rachel wasn't on the bed. She was crouched in the far corner of the room, but she was on the ceiling, her limbs bent at impossible angles, her head twisted completely around to stare at him. "Hello, Michael?" A voice layered with hatred spat his name. "The holy man, the deliverer." The entity knew him. It mocked him, taunted him, recounting his financial struggles, his wife's doubts. It attacked him with a ferocity that was purely physical, throwing him against the wall as if he were a doll. Michael fought back with prayer. His voice a powerful weapon against the darkness. He managed to pin Rachel down, and as he prayed, the thing inside her promised him one last, chilling thing. "I will destroy you," it seethed. "I will turn your faith to ash. I will make you watch as your family is torn apart. And when you're nothing, I will take your soul." With a final, piercing command from Michael, the spirit was cast out. Rachel collapsed, weeping and free. Later, Mr. Thorne, shaken to his core, offered Michael money, a lot of money, a briefcase full of cash. "Please, for your trouble, for the risk, And again, Michael refused. My help is not for sale, Mr. Thorne. It is given freely, as God's grace is given freely. He returned home once again with empty hands, and this time Sarah didn't just get angry, she broke. "You selfish man," she cried, her voice raw. "Your pride is more important than your own daughter's. That money was our answer. God put it in your hands and you threw it away." The argument that night was the worst they'd ever had. The crack in their foundation was now a chasm, and in that chasm, something stirred. A few days later, Sarah was at her wit's end at her failing shop when there was a chime at the door. A young woman walked in. It was Rebecca, the girl Michael had saved. She looked healthy, radiant. "Mrs. Evans, I just wanted to thank your husband again. He saved my life," Rebecca said, her smile warm. Then she pressed a thick, sealed envelope into Sarah's hand. "Please take this. It's a gift for your family, a token of our gratitude. Don't tell Michael. Let it be a surprise." Before Sarah could refuse, Rebecca was gone. Sarah looked down at the envelope. She peeked inside. It was stuffed with $100 bills, more money than she had seen in years. The temptation was too much. The image of Natalie's terrified face, of Jasmine's warning letter, of the empty refrigerator, it all swam before her eyes. With a trembling hand, she slipped the envelope into her purse. She felt a sudden, inexplicable chill, but she brushed it off as guilt. That night, Sarah came home with bags full of groceries, steak, fresh vegetables, ice cream. She cooked a feast. When Michael and the girls came to the table, their jaws dropped. "Sarah, what is this?" Michael asked, bewildered. Sarah forced a bright smile. "A miracle, honey, the shop. We got a huge last-minute order for a wedding, a massive down payment. It's all going to be okay." She looked her husband dead in the eye and lied. The shadow in the chasm smiled. The money solved everything. Natalie's phone was replaced. Jasmine's fees were paid. For a few weeks, the Evans house was filled with laughter and full stomachs, but the light felt false, strained, and then the other shoe dropped. Michael was at his church when a parishioner mentioned seeing Mr. Thorne's name in the paper, a small obituary. Shocked, Michael went to the Thorne estate. Police tape was strung across the gate. An ambulance was parked out front. He pushed his way inside, his heart hammering against his ribs. The scene he encountered would be seared into his memory forever. Mr. Thorne, his wife, and his niece Rachel were all dead. It wasn't a clean death. It was a massacre. The official report would later call it a murder-suicide, but the violence was excessive, supernatural. Michael stumbled back outside, his world tilting on its axis. If they had been dead for days, then who had given Sarah the money? Who was the girl that came to her shop? He raced home, confronting Sarah in the kitchen. "The money, Sarah, the money you said was from the shop. Where did it really come from?" Sarah, cornered and terrified, finally broke down and confessed. "It was Rebecca. She came to the shop. She gave it to me. I was so scared, Michael. I didn't know what else to do." The color drained from Michael's face. "Sarah, Rebecca and her entire family have been dead for over a week." The words hung in the air, cold and final. The money was cursed. It was a trap, and they had walked right into it, and the trap was already springing shut. Natalie's behavior had become erratic. She started dressing provocatively, skipping school, and was now openly dating Farhan. The gentle, faithful girl was gone, replaced by someone cynical and reckless. One night, Michael and Sarah were awakened by a scream from Jasmine's room. They found her on the floor, gasping for air, clawing at her throat. "It was Natalie," Jasmine choked out. "She was in my room. Her eyes, they were black. all black. She tried to strangle me. But when they looked, Natalie was fast asleep in her own bed, or so it seemed. Michael, his faith shaken but not yet broken, decided to perform a deliverance rite on Jasmine, hoping she could see the spirit's location. As he prayed over her, Jasmine's eyes flew open. The room seemed to grow dark and cold. "Daddy," she whispered, her finger trembling as she pointed across the room. "It's in Natalie." They all turned. Natalie was standing in the doorway, a grotesque, twisted smile on her face. "Hello, family," a voice that was not hers said. "Did you miss me?" The entity had made its home in their eldest daughter, and it was just getting started. The final descent was swift and brutal. Natalie discovered she was pregnant, a consequence of her time with Farhan under the entity's influence, a fact she had no memory of. The shame and confusion broke her. Meanwhile, the spirit influence over Sarah became absolute. It whispered to her in the voice of her own self-doubt, twisting her love into hatred, her faith into despair. "You did this," the voice hissed in her ear one evening as she sat alone at the dining table. "You brought this curse into your home. You are a hypocrite, a failure." When Natalie and Jasmine came downstairs, concerned, they found their mother staring at them with vacant, hate-filled eyes. "Today is the day you all die," Sarah said, her voice a flat, dead thing. She picked up a kitchen knife. What followed was a scene of unimaginable horror. The girls tried to run, but the doors and windows were sealed shut by an unseen force. They were trapped in their own home with their mother, who was now a puppet for a vengeful spirit. In the struggle, Natalie, weak and disoriented from her pregnancy, was the first to fall. Sarah, with a strength that wasn't her own, stabbed her own daughter. Jasmine watched, paralyzed with terror, as her sister's life bled out onto the floral-patterned rug. "You're next," Sarah said, turning to Jasmine. Just as she lunged, Michael burst through the front door. He had been at the Thorne estate, finally learning the truth from a dying Richard. The money was part of a demonic pact the Thornes had made for their wealth, a pact that required a sacrifice. The entity had been cheated, and it had come to collect its due from anyone connected to them. He was too late. He saw Natalie's lifeless body. He saw his wife, a knife in her hand, advancing on his youngest daughter. A red haze of grief and rage descended over Michael. He didn't see his wife. He saw the monster that had killed his child. He wrestled the knife from Sarah's hand, and in the frantic, nightmarish struggle, he plunged it into her chest. The moment she fell, the life fading from her eyes, the unnatural presence lifted. The house was suddenly terribly silent. Jasmine screamed, "Daddy! No! It was the demon! It was the demon!" Michael looked down at his hands covered in his wife's blood. He looked at his dead daughter. He had become the monster he sought to destroy. And that is how Pastor Michael Evans ended up in the Ross County Correctional Facility, serving a life sentence for the murder of his wife. The visitor he was waiting for that morning at the beginning of our story, it was Jasmine. She was in college now, a young woman who had lost everything. Their meeting in the sterile visitation room was a quiet storm of tears and shared, unbearable grief. "I'm so sorry, Jasmine," Michael wept. "I failed you. I failed all of you." "It wasn't your fault, Daddy," she whispered, her own tears falling. "We all made choices. We were all unhappy with what God had given us. We wanted more." As their time ended and Jasmine stood to leave, she turned for one last look at her father, and in that moment, her face changed. A cruel, familiar smile twisted her lips. "How does it feel, Michael?" A voice that wasn't Jasmine's hissed from her mouth. To be the one in a cage? To have lost everything. We told you we would destroy you. The entity had never left. It had just found a new, permanent home. It had followed Jasmine, the last surviving member of the Evans family, ensuring the curse would live on, that Michael's torment would never, ever end. He didn't answer. He just turned, and as he walked back to his cell, he began to pray, not for deliverance, not for freedom, but for his daughter's soul. The battle was lost, but his faith, a tiny battered flicker in an ocean of darkness, was all he had left. The story of the Evans family is a warning. Be careful what you wish for. Be grateful for what you have, because the darkness isn't always under the bed or in the basement. Sometimes the most terrifying darkness is the one we invite into our own hearts with the best of intentions, one small compromise at a time. If this story made you think, if it sent a chill down your spine, then hit that like button and let me know in the comments what you would have done in Michael S. situation. Could you have resisted the money? Could you have held onto your faith? And if you're not subscribed yet, please do. We have so many more true, terrifying tales from the Heartland to share. Thanks for watching. And remember, sometimes the most dangerous curses don't come from ancient artifacts, but from envelopes full of cash